Let's kick things off with a quote that just perfectly sums up the insurance world. It says, "Insurance is a cutthroat enterprise. It's all-out warfare." And it's so true. This isn't some gentle business, it's a battleground. Companies are constantly fighting tooth and nail for every single customer. And their weapons of choice in this war? Product features.
So welcome to our explainer, where we're going to peel back the curtain on health insurance. We're not just looking at this as customers, though. We're putting on our investor hats to figure out what really separates a solid, trustworthy insurance company from one that's just using a bunch of smoke and mirrors.
So here's how we're going to break it down. First, we'll look at the insurance arms race, basically why all these complicated features even exist. Then we'll dive into the essential stuff and see how they're not all the same. After that, the really fun part, the traps hidden in the fine print. We'll also touch on benefits that only work under very specific conditions, and then we'll give our final verdicts.
Okay, let's start with the big picture. Let's talk about the insurance arms race. This is all about that fierce, intense competition that forces companies to get creative. And sometimes, well, that creativity leads to a whole lot of confusion for us.
Think about it. In a market this crowded, every single company is desperate for an edge. So what do? They start tacking on all these bells and whistles to their policies, features that sound absolutely amazing in a sales pitch. But here's the billion-dollar question for an investor. Do these features actually create happy, loyal customers and a strong business? Or are they just setting the stage for future complaints and rejected claims?
All right, so now we get why these features are here. Let's start digging into the ones that are supposed to be the bedrock of any good policy. Because you're about to see that just because a feature is essential, it doesn't mean every insurer's version of it is any good.
You've seen the ads, right? Over 9,000 hospitals in our network. Insurers love to shout these huge numbers from the rooftops. But what's the big deal? Why is this one feature so important? And what does it really mean for the customer? And by extension, for the health of the business?
So in a perfect world, when you go to a network hospital, the process is just beautiful. It's seamless. You get admitted, you get treated, you go home. The insurer handles the bill directly with the hospital. That's the cashless claim. It's a lifesaver when you're already stressed out. And from a business perspective, this is how you build an amazing brand reputation.
Now let's look at the flip side. If you end up at a hospital that's not in their network, the story completely changes. The entire burden falls on you. You have to pay all the bills up front, out of your own pocket. Then you have to gather every single medical record, fill out stacks of forms, answer a million questions, and then just wait. It's a process that one of our sources actually called torturous, and you can see why. An insurance company that puts too many of its customers through this, well, it's going to have a serious reputation problem on its hands. And this is where the marketing promise can fall apart. See, even if you are at a network hospital, that cashless claim is not a guarantee. The insurer can still say no. They might claim there's insufficient information and force you down that painful reimbursement path anyway. Or they might pre-authorize just a tiny amount of the total bill. And that giant network of 10,000 hospitals, it might turn out there are only a handful in your actual city. This is the moment where customer trust is either solidified or just shattered.
So, what's our verdict? A good, solid hospital network is absolutely not a gimmick. In fact, it's a core pillar of the entire business. For an investor, you shouldn't just look at the size of the network. You have to think about its quality and how easy it is for customers to actually use. That tells you a lot about how much the company actually cares about its policyholders.
Okay, next up, pre- and post-hospitalization cover. We're talking about expenses like doctor's visits or medical tests before you go into the hospital and follow-up care after you get out. Pretty much every policy has this, but the real difference, the thing you should really pay attention to, is the duration. A policy that covers you for 180 days after you leave the hospital is worlds better than one that only covers you for 30. It's a small detail, but it speaks volumes about the quality of the product. So our verdict here is pretty straightforward. This is definitely not a gimmick, it's a must-have. But at the same time, it's not something to get super excited about. It's table stakes. You should expect it in any decent policy. The real story is in the details. How long does that coverage actually last?
All right, now we get to the really interesting part. Let's talk about the features that sound absolutely incredible on the brochure, but hide some nasty surprises in the fine print. This is where you see the true character of an insurance company.
Let's take the restoration benefit, for example. The sales pitch is fantastic. If you make a claim and use up your insurance coverage, don't worry. The company will magically restore it all in the same year. I mean, it sounds like an infinite safety net, doesn't it?
But then you run into the traps. Trap number one is the same illness rule. Let's say you have heart surgery. That restored money? Yeah, you probably can't use it for any more heart-related treatments for the rest of the year. Then there's trap number 2, the full exhaustion rule. Say you have a $100,000 policy and a claim for $80,000. That restoration benefit doesn't even kick in. Nope. It only activates after you've spent every single last penny of your original cover. These 2 rules can make the feature almost useless in many common scenarios. So our verdict here is buyer beware. The feature itself isn't a total gimmick. It can be valuable in the right situation, but the way it's often designed is super misleading. From an investor's perspective, this is a huge red flag. A company that relies on these kinds of confusing, restrictive clauses is basically building its business on a shaky foundation of future customer complaints.
Let's move on to our next category. These are the benefits that sound great and modern, but when you actually try to claim them, you find out it's a whole lot harder than you thought.
A couple of popular ones are coverage for alternative treatments, things like Ayurveda or homeopathy, and something called domiciliary hospitalization, which is basically treatment at home. These features sound great and appeal to a lot of people, but the conditions attached to them are, well, they're the whole story.
Just look at the hurdles you have to jump through for at-home treatment. You have to prove that it was literally impossible to get the patient to a hospital or that every single hospital bed in the entire area was full. On top of that, a doctor has to certify that this home care is needed for at least 3 full days. These are incredibly high bars to clear, which makes this benefit really, really hard to use.
And that leads us to our verdict. These features are kinda gimmicky. Not because they're totally worthless, but because the rules are so vague and the conditions are so strict that they very often lead to denied claims. For an investor, any feature that has a high chance of causing a dispute between the company and its customer is a warning sign of operational problems down the road.
Okay, let's pull all of this together. We've taken these features apart piece by piece, and now it's time to put them on a simple scorecard. Think of this as your cheat sheet for judging an insurer's entire product philosophy.
So here it is, our final scorecard. We've hit on most of these pretty hard. You'll also see daycare treatments and the no-claim bonus on the list. Now, we didn't have time to unpack those completely, but long story short, they are both definitely not gimmicks. Daycare coverage is essential for modern medicine, and a no-claim bonus is a solid incentive for customers. But as with everything we've talked about, the devil's in the details on how they're capped. At the end of the day, this scorecard isn't just about features. It's really a map of all the potential places where an insurer can either make a customer happy or create a total nightmare.
So, what's the big takeaway for anyone looking to invest in this sector? It's this. The companies that win in the long run won't be the ones with the cheapest policies or the longest list of flashy features. The winners will be the ones who focus on clarity and fairness, the ones who write policies that people can actually understand and use when they need them most. That's how you build real, lasting value.
And that really just leaves us with one final question for you to think about. When you're evaluating an insurer, are you just looking at the top-line numbers, at their premium growth? Or are you willing to look a little deeper, at the very design of their products, to see if they're building a business based on trust, or if they're breaking it one policy at a time?